Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH and Parent Media platforms. I'm Bubba O'Neil. As you know, we love speaking to and uncovering amazing sports stories from Southern Ontario and in particular the Golden Horseshoe. And folks, as you know, there are many. Today, a team that has captured the attention of the nation. And we've talked to someone who saw their recent run of success a long time ago.
It just feels like a very open American League, and with a Blue Jays team that's had this kind of depth, this kind of self-belief, this amount of just unsung heroes, that they're relevant. And I think they're going to be buyers at the deadline and only add to that talent base. So yeah, I'm in. I believe what is happening here is real. Do they win a World Series? Probably not. Are they going to be a playoff team and maybe finally get a playoff victory? Yeah, I think so.
Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Let's welcome JD Bunkis. And JD, thanks for joining us. But I got to ask you, you had the crystal ball out there about 3.5 months ago. Did you really believe what you were saying?
First of all, thanks again for having me. Second of all, that clip was so close. So close. Like, if I just said maybe even a World Series, that's the crystal ball. But I was like, yeah, World Series is a little bit of a stretch. So yeah, I've always, I really did. I pretty much from the second month of the season, once they started surpassing 500, even like kind of early on, there were just signs that this team was a little different than the iterations that we had seen in the past. They had some injections of youth. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was signed to a contract extension, which I think removed a lot of the noise around the season. George Springer was looking great. The bullpen actually was early on a massive success story for this team, and sort of stumbled in August, but has found themselves a bit this postseason. But yeah, I'd be lying to you, and if I said that I thought that they'd be in a World Series and that I thought that they would kind of walk through some of the better teams in the American League. But kudos to the Blue Jays, man. It's been an incredible season. I think that anybody that follows this team knows that it's special beyond just the results of the winning. And yeah, I think that the entire country's on fire and everybody's excited to be here.
It's amazing how in the postseason we tend to talk about moments, and even going back to 2016, 15, of course, 92, 93, there are moments that will never be forgotten. And it's incredible that in the Yankees series and the Mariners series, I mean, Vladdy was raking in both series, quite honestly. And then Springer with his moment, which I'm sure I believe you were at the ballpark. Can you just talk about what these moments over beating these quality teams has been like?
Well, the Springer moment stands alone, right? If you were there for 93, I was too young to really understand what it was. I was like a little baby boy. So 93 was always just told to me essentially through stories, and then through my family owning VHSs that I got to watch and learn about the team. But in terms of actually experiencing it, I have basically zero memory, like none. 2015 was so special because anybody that had followed this team that was around my age had not seen any level of success. And that kind of extended throughout Toronto sports. You looked at it and said, wow, good things can actually happen to this baseball team. And this isn't to disparage the bat flip, because it's genuinely one of the most meaningful sporting moments in my entire life. And that's not to disparage even Edwin Encarnacion's walk-off in 2016 against the Baltimore Orioles, but it's for a DS, and it was for a wild card game. And in both instances, the game was tied. This was, you were down 3-1 in a ballpark full of people that showed up with a collective trauma, honestly, of being a sporting fan in this country and in this city in particular, where Game 7s are said with a spooky undertone. It's not like Game 7, we're covered in glory in these, and everybody gets excited because they're used to winning. Game 7s usually coincide with a lot of pain, whether it's and a lot of that is down to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but still, Game 7s are tough in this city. And what was remarkable to me that was truly different than, I would say, any atmosphere that I've ever been in for a sporting event where the home team is trailing, is that it really felt as though the crowd stayed engaged throughout it. Were there moments of disappointment? Of course. Were there moments of fret? Absolutely. Were people looking nervous and having hushed conversations throughout some of the innings where the Blue Jays weren't able to score, or when the Mariners tacked on the third run through a home run? Like, absolutely there were. But every two-strike count, people were on their feet cheering. Every time that they were prompted with a big at-bat, people were on their feet cheering. And I think that there is a synergy between this fan base right now and the team that does feel special, that does feel team of destiny stuff. And again, you play the process out. It could have obviously gone the other way, but George Springer comes up to the plate, and he's one of the most clutch playoff performers in baseball history. This is literally what you signed him to a massive contract for, and he delivers. And what followed was, if you weren't there, you still know it because you felt it in your living room, you felt it in your basement, you felt it with your friends at a bar, whatever it was. It was pure elation, like this outpouring of joy that is pretty much not replicable by anything other than live sports. That is what you watch it for. That is why you endure losing seasons. That is why you watch 162 games of a regular season, or at least a huge chunk of them. It was euphoria, truly. And I think that a lot of people were probably like myself, where they experienced just like full body shakes and chills. And yeah, it was really, really, really special. I would put it amongst anything that I've ever seen. I would say that maybe the golden goal with Sidney Crosby is probably the only other time for me as a sporting fan where I felt quite that level of exhilaration. And yeah, it's a moment that will be remembered forever. When we're 20 years from now, people are going to be buying World Series merchandise, throwback stuff, just like we do with 93 stuff. And you're going to look back on this fondly regardless of the result.
It's funny that you do talk about the Game 7 angst that it's like a hangover. And to the point where people were talking about, myself included, that when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. walked in wearing an Austin Matthews jersey, I got the shakes. Like, it's that bad.
Yeah, it's very real. I tried not to fall into those traps, those mental trappings, but again, if I'm being fully transparent and honest, when the Jays were trailing 3-1 and it was out after out and they could not string hits together, I had quiet moments going, why did he wear the jersey? Which is insane. Like, that is lunatic behavior to think that there is any correlation between those two things happening, but that is the level of damage that the local hockey team has done to the residents of this province.
It's so crazy. Well, as Vladdy said, as George said, as everyone said in their victory celebration, still 4 more to go.
Yeah.
The LA Dodgers. Whoa. I mean, I'll just be basic here. How do you see the series shaping up?
Again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that it would be foolish to just say, like, yeah, the Jays are going to stomp these guys. They haven't seen anything like the Jays. But what I will say is the Dodgers have been front runners this entire postseason. There has not been a moment for them where they've had to look themselves in the mirror and really trust what the character of the group is. Yes, they're World Series champions, of course, but this is sort of where they were expected to be. They've got the biggest payroll in all of baseball. They've got the face of the game that plays for their team, who hits end pitches. They've got a cavalcade of all-stars littered throughout their roster, some of the best players on planet Earth. Arguably, inarguably, I would say, one of the best starting pitching staffs that has ever been assembled, and certainly the playoff numbers back that. And you do wonder, when you're a team like that, whether or not there becomes there's a difference between confidence and I think cockiness, and whether or not you can endure getting punched in the mouth by a team that has over and over and over again risen to the challenge during their darkest moments. You thought the Blue Jays were not going to be able to make the postseason this year. They did it. You didn't think they were going to hold on to the American League East championship. They ended up doing it. They fall down to the New York Yankees after blowing a 6-2 lead in truly devastating fashion, and they come back with a response the following game that was truly championship level stuff, especially from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They play this Mariners team. They drop the first 2 games at home, and then they have a heartbreaking loss in Game 5 again that could have sealed the series in 6. And what do? They continue to rip off wins. They win 4 of 5 in the remaining games of the series, including the last 2 at home, with, again, a magical moment that happens as the team is trailing 3-1. I don't think these guys ever count themselves out of a ball game. I don't think that they ever count themselves out of a series. And if I was going to pick a team based on what we've seen throughout the regular season and postseason combined, that is not going to buckle at the knees at the sight of the LA Dodgers and their all-star team, it is the Toronto Blue Jays.
I think a lot of things definitely do need to happen, and I think based on his health, obviously getting Bo Bichette in the lineup will be a big one. Do you see him? I mean, we're going to find out in about 24 hours from now. He has said he's going to be in the series, but obviously that's not the Toronto doctors or anyone speaking.
Sure.
Where does he fit into this series? Obviously, Springer, I don't know if he's 100%. There can only be one DH. How do you see this all working out?
So I think it's a near certainty he will play. If a pending free agent who is one of the faces of your franchise and who led the American League East or the American League in general in hits this season before he was injured tells you that he's ready to play and he's able to pass the checklist of things that the doctors needed to see from him, the training staff needed to see from him, which is running the bases, in which we've now seen him do. He runs the bases and he is not pulling up with pain, which is what happened before the CS and which is what excluded him from that series. It also should be noted that part of the reasoning in not playing Bo Bichette earlier and forcing the issue was that you didn't want to lose him for exactly this scenario. Now there is no tomorrow. There is one series left, and if Bo Bichette is willing to undertake the risks, then from a team standpoint, you're not concerned if you have to remove him from the roster and replace him from someone else because, again, there's no series behind this one. This is the World Series. There is no Universal Series. It's just this. This is it. This is all we've got. So when it comes to Bo, I understand a touch of the hand-wringing when it comes to these things. Again, we are from a country where hockey has been king forever and ever and ever, and there is a golden rule in which it states you don't mess with a winning lineup. This is different. This is not hockey, and this should not be the time for superstition. Bo Bichette is flat out one of the best hitters in the game. The LA Dodgers, again, deploy one of the best starting pitching staffs that we have ever seen. Statistically, throughout this postseason, they have been utterly untouchable. They throw out 4 starting pitchers that on any given night can throw massive velocity, a ton of nasty breaking stuff, and if they're going deep into a ball game, it should come as no surprise to anyone. So if you get the chance to put Bo Bichette's back in there, rusty or not, at the expense of one of the other fringier roster players, you're doing that. You have to be doing that. So is he on the roster? 100%, or I'll say 99.9999999% that he ends up playing and they end up clearing him to be a part of it. The bigger question is Springer's knee and how capable he is with moving around in the outfield. Because if they don't think that he's able to move around, then really the only option is to have him be a pinch hit bat, which I don't think is enough Bo Bichette, and I certainly don't think for a guy that is going to be looking to find his rhythm and impact the series is going to be enough. It's can he play second base? Because shortstop is now occupied by Andrés Giménez, and that is where he will be staying, and Bo Bichette will not be asked to range out in that area. So to me, now that he has passed the test of running the bases and being able to turn around a corner and not have to pull up lame, the fact that he has passed the test at the plate, the final question becomes, what is his lateral movement like? Is he a complete liability at second base? Because if he can be even serviceable there, yes, there is clearly a loss defensively with Bo there compared to what IKF would do or what Ernie Clement could do. But if you're talking about what they're going to need to do in this series and what has been the formula for the Blue Jays all season long, it's scoring 5 runs. They won 77 games and only lost 5 this year when they scored 5 runs. And so that remains to be the formula for the Jays. Yes, the defense is important. I don't want to undersell it. There is a little bit of scariness that comes with potentially him playing second base. But for me, if George Springer can move around at even a halfway decent clip, I'm putting him in the outfield and I'm asking Bo Bichette to DH. And if Bo Bichette can be serviceable and not kill you and not present like a truly dangerous risk at playing second base, then I think that has to be on the table as well.
certain intangibles I think that really interest a lot of people right now, and Schneider is become this interesting kind of fella, the manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, and obviously Game 5 of the ALCS took tremendous criticism for his management of the bullpen. Roberts on the other side, experienced, been there before, won before. I know with the Blue Jays, there's this sort of belief that everything is on the collaborative and that words and messages come down from the president and the GM. But how much responsibility and how much will the managers play in this series, do you believe?
Well, I always think that we tend to overrate the managers. And I think that we point to coaching and we point to managers when things go wrong, and we often neglect when they do things the right way. And here's what's clear with John Schneider. I thought that mistake in Game 5 was purely on him. I do. I don't think that was a message that was communicated from on high. To me, he seems like a guy who has been empowered now that he has been in the job for longer. And certainly, I don't believe that there was a strategy that was put in place of, hey, if you've got a one-run lead and it's the late innings, it's the eighth inning of a baseball game, and you're facing the top of the order, you should go with a guy who is getting absolutely tattooed by right-handed pitching and to face some of the best hitters in the sport. I think it was a choke. I do. I think it was a complete and utter failure mentally by him and the people that he was leaning on to go with that situation. I didn't like the explanation for it, and I frankly thought that if they lost the series and someone told me that he was going to get the Dwayne Casey treatment of manager of the year, coach of the year, who ends up getting fired, it wouldn't have shocked me, and I don't think they were going to do it, but I certainly think that would have been a defensible position to take. Like, it was that bad. But one of the things I think that I believe in across the board is everybody makes mistakes, and some are obviously more public than others, but it's how do you rebound from a mistake? Do you make it again? Do you continue to double down? Are you stubborn? Or do you actually take the time to improve yourself and take criticism and apply it to the next situation? And what happened the rest of the series? They didn't use Brendan Little again. He went to Jeff Hoffman for 6 outs in Game 6. 6 spectacular outs. He went back to his closer in Game 7, despite throwing over 30 pitches the night before, and he struck out the side. And I think John Schneider deserves credit for listening to the people around him, the baseball world at large, understanding the evidence, and saying that he was going to go with his best guys and go out on his shield on that, rather than try to overthink it, get cute, or go off of a spreadsheet that he was handed that may have told him that something in the situation was better. He went to Chris Bassett. It worked out brilliantly. Again, we celebrate the results of this, and that is the case with the manager here. And when it comes to Dave Roberts, like, don't forget, man, this is a guy who's won for sure, but also someone that has been criticized a lot for his decisions in the postseason. The Dodgers have been a very good baseball team now for a very long time, and Dave Roberts has been the whipping boy of that franchise many, many, many times. He has had a ton of suspect decision making. And so if I'm trying to look at this from an advantageous standpoint of like who has the edge, I don't really think that there is one. The key is for both managers, and I guess I'll focus on John Schneider here, is to not make mistakes based on like a fear, and going with your gut and going with what the information is telling you and trying your absolute best to make the best decision. And I hope that he's capable of doing that. And I think that he had his near-death moment, and that I don't expect another cataclysmic mistake from the manager like that. I really don't. I think he's been learning on the job, and I think that he's doing a good one.
We're all looking in the sky. Where's the plane? Shohei Ohtani, will he be a Blue Jay? He spurned us. His first visit back in 2024, he was booed and then punished us with his first at-bat home run. Will that be a storyline?
Yeah, of course it's a storyline. I think that, and I'll be leading my show tomorrow with this, but I'm kind of shocked with how little of a story it seems to be. I've seen a lot of the baseball community make the joke, like Shohei Ohtani's on the plane. I smiled at it the first time I saw it. I've now seen it like 2,000 times. And so it's kind of worn off for me. It just kind of seems like a bit of a cheap and lazy one at this point. I think that year, it was extremely tough. You thought that you were going to be getting potentially a transcendent player who does something that no one else in the sport does and hasn't done for a very, very long time, and especially effectively. So losing out on the Shohei sweepstakes was heartbreaking for this fan base. It really was. I remember in the moment thinking that he was on the plane, that this was going to be transformative for not just the franchise, but for the country's identity. This guy choosing the Toronto Blue Jays over the Los Angeles Dodgers, over the New York Yankees, over some of the glitzy franchises in Major League Baseball felt like something we had genuinely never seen before. Again, Kawhi Leonard was acquired and brought here via trade, and he is the best player that the Toronto Raptors ever had. The Toronto Maple Leafs are not a fair comparison because, again, hockey is king here. Toronto is one of the biggest markets in the NHL, but even still, they have not done a great job throughout their history of attracting major marquee free agents that are in their prime, and certainly no one of Shohei Ohtani's ilk. Like John Tavares was a massive signing here. And, you know, he's one of the, at the time, maybe best 15 to 20 players in the NHL. So this would have been very, very different. My expectation would be that he does get some boos, that there will be some fans that decide to, poke the bear. I think that I was one of those people that when he first showed up in 2024, didn't even sit down yet and was booing him before he hit a home run right out of the ballpark. I don't think that he's particularly liked in Toronto. I think that there's definitely a sentiment that he led people on. But what is so remarkable is that despite something so devastating, this run has been so entertaining and enjoyable and lovable with a team full of players that people relate to and adore, that there isn't really hand-wringing about Shohei Ohtani. There isn't really like, oh my God, I wish he was with us. Maybe it happens if the Dodgers win, but as of right now, I think the story is how little a story it actually is to the people that care about this baseball team.
Well, I'm not going to pin you towards who you think are going to win. I think I got your feeling off the top there of that this is going. Who's going to win the World Series?
I hope the Blue Jays win, and I believe that they can win. I think that. Listen, the Dodgers are the favorites, and that should be pretty obvious based on the track record through this postseason, the fact that they're defending world champions, and the payroll, the roster they deploy, all of these different things. But this is a coin toss for me. Like, I don't view the Dodgers as worlds apart from the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't. I think that it is a false narrative. I think that anybody that's paying attention to what these two teams are doing right now, thinking that the Dodgers are just going to roll over these guys, is out of their minds. Like, the Blue Jays as a team are hitting almost 300 over the course of the postseason. Like, that is very, very different than what the Dodgers just faced. They've got multiple starting pitchers that have been extremely effective throughout the postseason. The Dodgers just beat a team in the Brewers that deployed one starting pitcher and the rest were openers. It was bullpen games. Like, they had one all-star in Freddie Peralta. That was it. They faced a Reds team that was terrible in the wild card game, and they had a tip on him. Like, Hunter Green was tipping his pitches. They faced a Philadelphia Phillies team where the entire top of their order collapsed in just about every single one of those games. Their bullpen had a huge choke moment, and they did not look like a championship caliber team. They looked like a team that was built on, quite frankly, again, a lot of trauma. And the Blue Jays are different. They are a tough-ass team. They believe in themselves. They are hitting like crazy. They are getting great starting pitching. And they have a home field advantage that I think is very real. The Blue Jays are absolutely in this series. This is not Golden State Warriors versus Toronto Raptors with Kevin Durant, but it might end up being Toronto Raptors against the Golden State Warriors in terms of which city gets the result.
Look forward to it. I got to get you out on one thing here, and of course we've kind of dusted on the Maple Leafs a little bit here. What? I mean, Anthony Stolarz is gone to the media. He's upset. I've never seen Craig Berube call. I mean, what have they played 7-8 games, and Craig Berube's calling a timeout every game and lashing at his players. What is going on with the Maple Leafs? Good that the Blue Jays. I mean, it's only about 7 or 8 more days that they can hide behind the Blue Jays. But JD, what is going on there?
They look bad, period. They look disconnected. They look slow. They look passionless. And it's extremely disappointing because, yeah, they're working in some new players, but there's a lot of carryover from the year before. And frankly, I think that a team like the Blue Jays should be inspiring the Maple Leafs play, watching them in the way that the city is captivated by them, the way that the city wants to root them on, the way that the city loves them, should be something that these Leafs players are desperately dying to pursue. And not only that, they watched a star player walk out the door, and everyone was criticized from the fan base down. Like, all of the fans were looked at as the reason Mitch Marner departed, or the media, whichever ones you want to put it on. But there was very little slinging at the team for that. There was very little, hey, what about you guys and your room and your players that failed to come up in those big spots? Because ultimately you are the ones that are determining this. And if you had more success, maybe Mitch Marner would have stayed. And I thought it was time for a change. I'm certainly not pining for the return of Mitch Marner. But what I mean by that is, if you are the group in which he left and it was that public, is there not a level of pride in your leadership core that would dictate a incredible start from your hockey team? A very passionate start from your hockey team. And that's not what people are seeing right now. And so it's very early in the season. And I know that anybody that criticizing them is going to be met with people who just go, hey, it's so early. Why are you being so stupid and being worried about any of this? I think that there have been some pretty serious markers of concern here. And yeah, things can get away from them quickly. So my hope is, and now without Chris Tanev for at least 3 games, that the Leafs can find their level, that they can start to imprint an identity in which they are going to be trying to win, and that they can look like a cohesive group that is led by a highly, highly paid player in Austin Matthews, who starts to look like more of his old self, and maybe even a departure from that as a guy who plays with a little bit more passion.
JD, you have those post game shows. It is must see or must. I guess it's must see, but it's also much listen in terms of a product on the radio, because it kind of times out when I leave this building here and I get to hear you guys talk about the breakdown of the game, which is always outstanding stuff. Your podcast really, really good in the morning. Kind of times out perfectly when I wake up to when I come in here as well too. First of all, where can people find you? You got great products out there on Sportsnet.
Yeah, you can just find everything, the JD Bunkis podcast, Apple and Spotify, YouTube. Same with Leafs Talk, which is the post-game show that you're referring to. Comes off after every Leafs game. Not right now. It'll be on hiatus during the crossover with the Blue Jays run. I don't think that we're going to have a major demand. And also, I want to watch these games and try to go to these games if I can get a ticket that isn't $1 billion. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. Reach out anytime. Again, I always love the interaction, and I love people who actually like the show.
Thank you so much for joining us, man. One of my favorite guys to pop on this podcast. Yeah. Really appreciate your time, partner.
Always a pleasure joining you, man. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Enjoy the World Series. Hey, folks, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, want to hear from you, please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. Hit it. And if you have something to say, we always appreciate your comments. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you soon.